The city sprawled beneath her, a glittering maze of lights and shadows, but inside, her world felt strangely confined. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching as dawn crept over the skyline, her lean figure silhouetted against the neon haze. The apartment was the epitome of luxury minimalist furniture. Smart systems embedded seamlessly into every corner, and a silence so profound it pressed against her ears like a weight. She was supposed to feel at home here. After all, this was the life she had carved out for herself, off-grid. Yet perched high above the city's chaos in the most exclusive skyscraper downtown. But something was already wrong. The smart lighting flickered, a subtle glitch that pulsed rhythmically, as if the building itself were breathing or watching. Lila frowned, rubbing her temple, the unease settling like a stone. Her fingers tapped rapidly against the sleek glass console on the wall, bringing up the apartment's digital controls. The interface responded sluggishly, the colors momentarily shifting into static before settling back. She rubbed her eyes, feeling the first twinge of paranoia. Had she brought this on herself by moving into a place that seemed too perfect? Her first encounter with the building staff was equally unsettling. Mildred Hayes, the concierge, was a small woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. When Lila asked casually about the building's floors, Mildred's smile tightened. "There's nothing below the usual basements, dear," she said, voice low, almost rehearsed. But the flicker of hesitation betrayed her. Lila pressed. "Are you sure? I heard some odd noises coming from the lower levels just last night." Mildred's gaze darted away, her fingers clutching the edge of the counter. "Old pipes, maybe. This building's been through renovations, nothing to worry about." But the denial felt brittle, like a pane of glass ready to shatter. Layla's instincts screamed that there was a secret, one buried deep beneath the polished surface. Back in her apartment, she connected her laptop to the building's network. Her screen flooded with encrypted data packets and firewalls layered thick as armor. Her heartbeat quickened. This was no ordinary residential system. She began to navigate the digital labyrinth, her fingers flying over the keyboard, eyes sharp and unyielding. Every firewall she breached revealed another layer of concealment, a digital veil hiding something substantial. As night fell, the skyscraper transformed. The hum of machinery and distant voices filtered up from the depths, muffled but persistent. Lila wandered the sterile corridors, the elevator panels' glitching floor numbers skipping, flickering as though erasing themselves from existence. Her footsteps echoed, a solitary rhythm against the silence. Her fragmented memories, already fragile from years of running and hiding, fluttered uncomfortably at the edges of her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, or worse, that something was rewriting the story of her own past. Her curiosity was no longer a luxury. It was a necessity. Somewhere beneath the skyscraper's shimmering facade lay a secret, and Lila Morgan was determined to uncover it no matter the cost. As she settled back at her desk, the screen blinked once more, a final warning or an invitation. The game had begun. Though the building was a marvel of modern architecture, inside her minimalist space, the atmosphere was a contrasting blend of cold technology and quiet isolation. Layla sat cross-legged on the floor, her laptop open before her like a portal into the digital underworld she knew so well. Lines of code streamed down multiple screens, cascading like a waterfall of ones and zeros, a language only she could truly understand. Her fingers moved with practiced agility, slicing through virtual layers of security that guarded the skyscraper's network. At first glance, the building's digital infrastructure seemed typical for a place of such high value. Encrypted wireless signals, biometric locks, and multi-tiered firewalls designed to protect residents' privacy and corporate secrets alike. But as Lila dug deeper, subtle irregularities began to reveal themselves. There were anomalies within the data flow, encrypted packets that didn't fit the expected patterns, firewalls that masked other firewalls, and hidden backdoors slipped in with surgical precision. A flicker caught her eye. The glass walls around her apartment seemed to distort momentarily, like a ripple over a still surface. For a brief instant, the sprawling cityscape outside fractured into shards of static and color, pixels dissolving then snapping back into place. The sensation was disorienting, and a cold prickle of paranoia crawled up Lila's spine. Was it a glitch in the building's digital systems or something else? A deliberate signal, perhaps? She glanced around her apartment, the shadows cast by her screens deepening the room's starkness. Her mind raced with possibilities. If these glitches were not random, then what were they signaling? She returned to the code, eyes scanning for patterns, searching for meaning in the chaos. The encrypted packets pulsed like invisible currents through the network, data hidden within data, shifting forms as if alive. Layla's fingers danced over the keyboard, decrypting fragments, each revealing more unsettling clues. Subtle manipulations of residents' digital footprints, traces of altered histories, and digital erasures that hinted at rewriting reality itself. The implications were chilling. It wasn't just security measures protecting the building anymore. It was an elaborate system of control, invisibly shaping the lives of everyone within these walls. Who was behind it? And why? Her thoughts spiraled, but Lila forced herself back to logic. She was a hacker trained to see through obfuscation, to find the truth buried beneath layers of deception. Yet even she had never encountered such sophisticated concealment. Suddenly, a data trail flickered on her screen. A string of code that should have been there but abruptly vanished, leaving only an empty trace. The silence in her apartment deepened, broken only by the distant hum of city life beyond her window. Layla leaned back, her breath shallow, heart pounding as she contemplated what she had uncovered. This was no ordinary security setup. Beneath the surface, this building hid secrets darker than she had imagined. The night stretched on, and Lila found herself both drawn and repelled by the mystery. The skyscraper, with all its gleaming luxury and digital perfection, had become a cage woven from invisible threads of code and control. Somewhere deep inside its systems lay truths that could destroy lives, including her own. Determined not to be just another passive occupant swallowed by the building's secrets, Lila began to formulate her next move. Every keystroke, every line of decrypted code was a step closer to illumination. But with each discovery, the shadows around her seemed to grow thicker, and the question echoed relentlessly through her mind. What else was lurking in the depths of this digital labyrinth, waiting to be uncovered? As dawn approached, Lila's apartment was bathed in the pale blue glow of her screens, the city outside awakening to a new day, unaware of the silent war waging within its glass heart. She knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere beneath the surface of the skyscraper, the truth waited, and she was determined to find it, no matter the cost. But as the network pulsed and shifted, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that the building was watching her back. The hum of distant elevators and the quiet murmur of a few residents formed a low ambient soundtrack, but her mind was focused entirely on the task ahead. She headed straight for the concierge desk, where a woman of advanced years sat behind a polished counter, her eyes sharp and wary beneath a crown of silver hair. Mildred Hayes glanced up as Layla approached, the corners of her mouth tightening into a guarded smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good afternoon, miss. How can I help you today?" Layla returned the smile, though it was more a mask than a sign of warmth. "I just moved in and I'm still getting familiar with the building. I was wondering if you could help me with some questions about the lower floors." Mildred's gaze flickered slightly, a shadow passing across her face. Lower floors. "We have the usual basement parking and maintenance levels." "Why, do you ask?" There was something in the way she said it, a subtle edge that suggested the question was unwelcome. Lila's instincts sharpened. "I've been noticing some odd things with the building systems, glitches in the security protocols. It makes me curious about what's down there." Mildred's hands folded tightly on the desk. "Buildings this size always have their secrets, dear. But I'm afraid you won't find anyone admitting to anything unusual." Layla leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Is there a reason for that, something you're not allowed to talk about?" The concierge's eyes darted toward the hallway, then back. "I'm just a concierge. I see a lot, but I don't always understand what it means. Sometimes it's safer not to ask too many questions." The warning in her tone was clear. Lila's pulse quickened, but she pressed on. "Have you ever heard noises or seen anything strange coming from the lower levels?" Mildred hesitated, then whispered, "Sometimes late at night, there are sounds, machines, voices." The staff hushed it up quickly. "It's all very hush-hush. I'd watch your back if I were you." Before Lila could respond, the concierge straightened, slipping back into her professional demeanor. "I wouldn't want to get you worried over nothing," Lila nodded, masking her unease. As she turned to leave, Mildred called softly, "Be careful, Lila. Not everyone here plays fair." The warning lingered in Lila's mind as she made her way through the sterile corridors. She stopped at a security station where a young guard was monitoring multiple screens. Approaching casually, she asked, "Excuse me, can you tell me about the building's lower floors? I heard there might be restricted areas." The guard's smile was tight, eyes flicking briefly to a silent radio clipped to his shoulder. "Sorry, ma'am, no public access below basement level." "Standard protocol." Layla pressed, "Is there any reason why those areas are off limits? Maintenance, utilities?" "Security reasons," he replied smoothly. "Nothing for residents to worry about." The rehearsed nature of his denial only deepened Layla's suspicions. As she walked away, she caught a glimpse of his hand hovering near the radio, ready to call for backup if needed. Back in her apartment, the city lights twinkled in the dark beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but Layla's gaze was fixed on her laptop screen. Lines of code scrolled rapidly as she sifted through the hacked schematics she'd accessed earlier. The building's blueprints were encrypted, but bits and pieces had leaked through, revealing anomalies, unreachable floors, locked-off sections, and corridors that didn't match any official description. Her thoughts spun back to Mildred's cautious words and the guard's practiced denial. It was clear the building was hiding something far beneath the polished surface. Lila's fingers paused over the keyboard, her mind racing. The sub-basement was no longer just a theory. It was a real, dangerous secret, and she was closer than ever to uncovering it. But the questions nagged at her relentlessly. How deep did the conspiracy go? Who else knew? And most importantly, how far would they go to protect it? Outside, the city pulsed obliviously, but inside Lila's apartment, the flickering screen was a gateway to a shadowy world where trust was scarce and danger lurked just 10 floors below. Her resolve hardened. The usual hum of the city below was muffled tonight, swallowed by the silence that had wrapped itself around the luxury skyscraper she now called home. She'd spent the past days piecing together fragments of digital data, tracing faint anomalies within the building's network, and tonight she was closer than ever to something real, something dangerous. Her eyes darted across the screen as lines of code scrolled by, a digital puzzle slowly revealing itself. The encrypted blueprints she'd been chasing flickered, then shifted into a new form architectural diagrams unlike any she'd seen in the building's public records. The usual floor plans ended abruptly at the underground parking level, but here, in the hidden files, 10 additional floors extended downwards, etched in stark detail. Layla's heart thudded in her chest as she absorbed the implications. 10 floors below ground. A secret sub-basement no one admitted existed. She leaned back, exhaling slowly, the weight of her discovery settling over her like a shadow. This wasn't just some obscure maintenance area or forgotten storage space. The sterile, precise layouts hinted at labs, containment chambers, and complex machinery. Her mind raced. What was being hidden down there? And why was the building staff so adamant in denying its very existence? A sudden flicker on one of her screens caught her attention. The network's firewall pulsed with a subtle, almost imperceptible resistance. Someone was watching. Someone was aware of her intrusion. The thrill of the hack was now tangled with raw, creeping paranoia. Earlier that day in the lobby, she'd had a brief encounter with Mildred Hayes, the elderly concierge whose sharp eyes seemed to miss nothing. Mildred had approached her cautiously, voice low and trembling, hinting at things best left unspoken. "They don't want you poking around where you shouldn't," she'd said, glancing nervously at the security cameras blinking from every corner. Layla had nodded, a faint smile masking the unease creeping beneath her skin. Mildred's subtle warnings only confirmed that the building itself was a fortress one, not just of steel and glass, but of secrets and surveillance. Back in her apartment, the smart systems she'd once trusted now betrayed her. Lights flickered with no cause, the temperature oscillated erratically, and soft, intermittent beeps from her security software hinted at breaches she couldn't trace. It was as if the building was alive and watching, adapting to her every move. She rubbed her temples, the fragments of memories, some real, some possibly implanted, whirling in her mind. Had she already been touched by whatever experiments were conducted below? The question gnawed at her, sharpening her resolve even as it deepened her isolation. Her gaze drifted to the panoramic window overlooking the city. The skyline glittered with indifferent beauty, neon lights and distant sirens painting a cold, cyberpunk tableau. Yet the skyscraper she inhabited gleamed like a monolith of glass and steel, an immaculate facade concealing its darkest depths. Tonight, Lila promised herself she would prepare. The discovery of the invisible floors was the breakthrough she needed, but it was only the beginning. She had to find a way down into the bowels of the building and into the heart of the conspiracy. Her fingers danced across the keyboard once more, tapping into hidden networks, tracing access points, and hunting for the elevator shafts or service passages that would lead her 10 floors below ground. Every keystroke was a defiant challenge thrown at the unseen watchers. Suddenly, a message blinked on her screen, an anonymous warning: "Stop digging. You don't know what you're getting into." Her lips curled into a wry smile. That was exactly why she had to keep going. As the night deepened, the skyscraper's secrets loomed larger, and Lila's determination burned brighter. The invisible floors were no longer just lines on a blueprint, they were a doorway into a shadow world where memories were manipulated, identities rewritten, and freedom stripped away. And Lila Morgan was ready to descend. But as the digital clock ticked past midnight, the first sounds of approaching footsteps echoed faintly outside her door, and the cold certainty settled in her bones. She was no longer alone. The descent into darkness had begun, and the skyscraper was watching her every move. The luxury skyscraper around her was a silent giant, glass walls reflecting the neon city lights outside, but inside something felt disturbingly wrong. The digital glitches that had first caught her attention were escalating. Subtle at first, a flicker in the smart lighting system, a momentary blackout of her apartment's security cameras, but now they took on a sinister rhythm. Her fingers danced over the keyboard, eyes scanning lines of encrypted data pouring in from the building's network. She could feel the digital tendrils of the skyscraper's infrastructure wrapping tighter around her. Her hacking tools pinged with warnings, firewalls adapting, countermeasures activating. Then, unexpectedly, a ghostly message blinked on her primary monitor. "Stop." It flashed for a split second before vanishing, leaving her with a sinking feeling deep in her gut. "Who's watching me?" she whispered to the empty room, the echo of her own voice bouncing off the cold walls. Her heart raced as she tried to trace the message's origin, but the system was labyrinthine, cloaked in layers of obfuscation that suggested a highly sophisticated security apparatus. This wasn't just corporate protection, it was a trap. As she leaned back, she caught movement out of the corner of her eye. The building's security cameras, she knew their locations well, seemed almost alive. Their red recording lights flickered like ominous eyes tracking her every move. The sensation was suffocating. Every step she took in her own apartment felt monitored, every breath measured. Her phone buzzed softly, a message from Ethan: "Be careful. I'm picking up increased security sweeps near your location. Don't push too hard tonight." Lila typed back quickly, no choice. Need to know what's really going on beneath this building. The fragmented memories that haunted her mind clawed their way to the surface, blurring the line between past and present. Faces and places flickered like corrupted files, some painfully familiar, others alien and distorted. Were these her memories? Or had someone rewritten them? She moved to the window and stared out at the city skyline, her reflection fractured across the cracked pane. The glass distorted her face into shards, mirroring the broken pieces of her identity. She swallowed hard, shaking off the creeping despair. She was no stranger to fights for control over data, over truth, over herself, but this was different. The enemy was inside her own mind. Suddenly, the apartment's lights stuttered, plunging her into near darkness before strobing erratically like a malfunctioning heartbeat. Shadows leapt across the walls in erratic bursts, the atmosphere thick with unseen menace. Her breath caught in her throat as the digital world she trusted turned hostile. Her hands trembled as she reached for her encrypted comms device. "Ethan," she whispered, "I'm not sure what's real anymore. The system's messing with me." From the other end came a steadying voice. "You're not alone, Lila. We'll break through this. Just hold on." But even as she clung to his words, a cold certainty settled in her bones. The watchers in the walls were closing in, and every secret she unearthed only tightened their grip. Somewhere deep beneath the surface, 10 floors down, the real battle was waiting. And Lila knew the next steps could cost her everything, even her own mind. She squared her shoulders, the defiant spark in her eyes undimmed. Whatever the cost, she would fight. The watchers may be in the walls, but she was no ghost to be silenced. As the night deepened, so did the shadows. Surrounded by a fortress of screens and tangled cables, she sat hunched over her laptop, the rhythmic tapping of keys punctuating the silence. Tonight, the glitches and cryptic warnings that had plagued her apartment felt heavier, more urgent. She needed help, and there was only one person she could call. The door creaked open, and Ethan Shaw stepped inside, shaking off the rain from his jacket. His tall frame filled the cramped space, a rugged charm softened by the tired lines on his face. "You still running from ghosts, Lila?" he asked with a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. She looked up, her sharp gaze meeting his steady one. "Only the ones worth chasing." Ethan's presence was a paradox, a reminder of battles fought and lost, yet a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. They hadn't spoken in months, their last parting bitter and unresolved. But the stakes had changed. The Skyscraper's secrets demanded an alliance. He moved to the cluttered table, pulling out a battered backpack. From it, he produced a stack of printed schematics, their edges curling from frequent handling. "I managed to get these from an old contact," he said, spreading them out. "The building's official plans don't include the sub-basement, but these blueprints show 10 floors below ground, exactly where you think those mind experiments are happening." Layla leaned in, her fingers tracing the hidden levels. The sterile lines and symbols masked the horrors beneath: chambers for memory erasure, digital nodes for psychological control. "How deep does this rabbit hole go?" she whispered. Ethan's eyes darkened. "Deep enough to bury anyone who gets too curious." Together, they began piecing together the puzzle: security protocols that adapted in real time, encrypted networks that shifted like shadows, and surveillance sweeping every corner. Ethan shared insider knowledge of corporate tactics, how they silenced whistleblowers, erased inconvenient memories, and manipulated digital footprints. Outside, rain tapped a steady rhythm against the window panes, the city's distant hum a faint reminder of normal life. Inside, whispers of conspiracy filled the room, a fragile cocoon of trust amidst pervasive paranoia. "You're playing a dangerous game," Ethan warned, voice low. "They're watching. They'll come for you?" Layla nodded, the weight of his words settling over her. But retreat was no longer an option. Their conversation stretched into the night, strategies unfolding, cyberattacks, infiltration points, contingencies for worst-case scenarios. The encrypted drive Ethan handed her was more than just data. It was a lifeline, a weapon, and a symbol of fragile trust. As dawn threatened the horizon, Lila felt a flicker of something she hadn't dared in months: hope. Yet beneath it lurked a cold certainty that the battle for truth was just beginning, and the enemy was closing in. The skyscraper loomed outside, silent and indifferent, its glass walls reflecting a city oblivious to the war waging 10 floors below. Lila sat back, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The next move was hers, but this time she wasn't alone. A sudden, sharp beep from her monitor broke the silence. An unauthorized access alert. Someone was inside her digital domain. The game had begun, her eyes narrowed. Bring it on. And with that, Lila plunged headfirst into the shadows of the skyscraper's dark heart, where trust was scarce and every secret could be a death sentence. The alliance with Ethan was a gamble, but one she was willing to take. Because to fight monsters, sometimes you had to become one, or at least find those who already had scars to prove it. Outside, the city's neon lights flickered like distant warnings. Inside, the battle for minds and memories was about to escalate beyond anything Lila had imagined. And she would face it, no matter the cost.